Hello, and welcome back to Practically Political. I'm Dave Spencer. It's great to have you with us. I'm joined, as always, by my partners, Ashley Davis and Kurt Bardella. And once again, gee, I wish there was stuff to talk about. I tell you, nothing ever goes on during the Trump years, right? At least it's not dull. So I think the first thing we should talk about is the tragic and horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk, which I think was just 360 degrees of terrible. And what I mean by here's a guy, whether or not you agreed with him, he did what is sorely lacking in our country. He encouraged dialogue with the other side. He did it respectfully. He wanted to disagree with you. He wanted to prove why his set of beliefs were better. He also would go out into enemy territory, so to speak, and talk to everyone. And I don't understand the motive. If I would almost think, it was some guy from the right that wanted to help the right's cause. I know that sounds cynical, but look what's happened, right? It's just galvanized his supporters. It's made Trump and the administration determined to get even more retribution. It's made a lot of people wonder what's going on. And the only other thing I would say is that look at the contrast between how Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, has approached this and how Trump has approached it. Spencer Cox has talked about how it's easy to point the finger, but both sides are guilty of this. Doesn't matter which side is worse, we both do it. So we need dialogue. And on Trump is, oh, the radical left lunatics are responsible for this. The examples he gave conveniently left out Josh Shapiro. They left out Melissa Horvath from Minnesota and her husband. They left out Paul Pelosi. And it's really sad because you always hope that somehow at one point the president would try to unify us. And I'm not saying he's got to be Reagan after the Challenger exploded or Clinton after the Oklahoma City bombing or even Obama after Sandy Hook, but just do something to unify, but he just doesn't have it in him. So here we are, I think, in a very perilous place in our country. And finally, if you listen to what he said, well, we have to beat him up. And then someone asked him, oh, you mean at the ballot box? And he goes, well, we can't do that because the elections are rigged. So what's left except violence? Anyway, am I being too cynical? What say you, Ashley? What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, on the violence, I do have to say that I am pleasantly surprised that there hasn't been mass protest or any type of destruction happening throughout the country just because of the level of emotion that this has brought out on actually on every side just as human beings. But I think there's three things that come out of this. First of all, I think Governor Cox has done a great job. I did not know him that well before this, but think and I'm pretty involved in Republican governors, but he's just someone I haven't gotten to know, but thought he did a fantastic job. Two, this is very personal to this administration. One, obviously, before the election, the attempted assassination of the president, but also of former president at the time, but also Charlie's friends with a lot of these people, personal friends. Obviously, he was 31 years old, as we all know. Mainly all the staffers in the White House and the administration are in their early 30s and 30s, and, Charlie kinda grew up in politics with a lot of these staffers, but also very, very close with JD and obviously Don Jr. So I do think this is a little
I
different than
think he
just
helped Vance become the vice presidential
he
choice,
did,
and Vance
he
believes that.
did. Yeah, Charlie, asked Don Jr. to meet with him way back when Vance was still, considered an anti-Trumper, and that was kind of the first, step in him becoming vice president. But I think the reason this is a little different is there is a personal connection to these people, but, one of the things that I feel is interesting here is, one, I am a big believer that social media has a lot of impact on what's been happening. People go down these rabbit holes of what their own beliefs are and continue to get 100% radicalized on either side of the aisle. And you look at Discord, and Kurt may be cooler than me, but my son has the Discord apps, which are kind of tied to gaming. But this is like the third or fourth major incident that happened around this Discord app. And then third is what I don't even think I appreciated was the impact that Charlie had on this generation. My 16-year-old who, believe it or not, we don't talk politics at home. I'm not like, "Oh, you have to be conservative," like, whatever. And he totally knew who Charlie Kirk was, watched all of his TikToks, and not that he agreed with everything Charlie said, but just he was a major even Democrats, I mean, like, young kids that aren't considered, conservative. I mean, same thing. Charlie changed, the whole dynamic for the Republican Party that I know I didn't appreciate, and I just don't know who is going to be able to take that slot because it's a personality that would be hard to replace.
Yeah, you know, it's challenging because obviously on one hand, like anyone who thinks that provoking or using violence is going to actually end up helping their side is sorely mistaken. This you know whatever the motive might have been or whatever political inclinations were behind that motive, I can assure you, you have only served to incite, motivate, and create this rallying around effect around an ideology now that you say that perhaps you are against. Well, you just made it stronger. You also just hurt. If you are a Democrat, he's like, I can't think of a greater enemy to the Democratic Party than someone doing what they just did to Charlie Kirk. Uh, this does nothing but put the Democratic Party in a position where they get uh, cast widely as extremists who cheer on violence. Um, on the flip side of it, this has also provoked, I think, a very uh, really important conversation about free speech. We saw the Attorney General go out there and just make a plain idiotic statement, that we need to be prosecuting, what they define as hate speech in this country. That was widely condemned, and I have to give Republicans credit here. Like many Republicans were like, "Hold the phone, that's going too far."
And
Uh,
she walked it back, right? From what I think she did.
she did walk it
Yeah.
back, but then the president, in his own way, kind of doubled down on it, like in some of
Uh,
his interactions, and it's just like the impulse to want to meet whatever it is that you disagree with some semblance of retaliation is what's destroying this country, and it's destroying discourse in this country. We cannot live in a place where if you express something I disagree with, the response is, well, you should lose your livelihood. You should be, brought to the public square, feathered and tarred effectively. Like that. That's not going to solve anything ultimately. Um, this campaign by the right to get people fired for however they reacted to Charlie Kirk, it's like that's not going to make anything better, folks. It's retribution, it's vengeance, but don't engage in that and then turn around and tell me about scripture because scripture is pretty clear. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. It's pretty black and white there. Don't turn around and tell me certain types of people deserve to die, and then later on tell me every life counts. We must do everything we can to be pro-life. The ideological inconsistency is what drives me nuts. Uh, even the attempt of trying to, you know, make it so that some of the more provoking things Charlie espoused didn't happen. Like you're not doing him a service. Like he believed what he believed, and he was proud of it. He was not shy about that. He was going to college campuses, engaging people in these conversations because he believed so strongly in his point of view that he was willing to let it undergo scrutiny and let it undergo a rigorous debate. He would be the first to say, "Don't make it so that I didn't say those things. Don't pretend like those things didn't happen." That betrays everything that he actually stood for. And so, like, I think that this has just accelerated kind of the downward spiral that we're in right now. And it's not going to get any better. I very much fear that we're going to enter a period of time where someone is going to do something to retaliate. And that's going to be another tearing of the fabric of our country. And I don't know how it ends, because clearly tragedy isn't enough to stop it from happening. Tragedy is enough to jar people into like, hey, maybe we need to dial it down, everybody, no matter who started it, no matter who's worse. Why can't we all just be like, this is not the way it should be? And then my final thought is, I wish it wasn't this school shooting that that that
Mhm.
has gotten everyone so animated, um, and in a news cycle that actually won't subside. Like, why isn't it that when kids are getting murdered in schools, that's not the news cycle that goes on and on until we actually get to a solution? At the same time that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, there was another school shooting in Colorado.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
like, what is it going to take?
Yeah, and I will just a couple of things. I agree that parsing what people said doesn't achieve anything. Two examples. People said, "Oh, Charlie said if there's a black pilot on a plane, I wouldn't go on a plane." And he questioned the Civil Rights Act. Well, he did question the Civil Rights Act, and that was probably not the wisest thing to do. But he was misquoted. He basically said, by having affirmative action, you lower the standard for black people, which is actually insulting black people. And I
Hmm.
I do agree with that. And so again, you have to look at not what people said, but what they overall have done. And I think Charlie was a model, and more power to him. He got so many young people engaged. And I think
Hmm.
if I've always said, be engaged. You can be engaged out of rage, you can be engaged out of adulation, but just get engaged. I think the apathy that the American people have had in terms of turnout and not really caring what's going on is one of the main reasons that our political system is so dysfunctional.
I
So
also, oops, sorry.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think we also have to not forget the mental health aspect. I don't know if you read the texts that kind
Hmm.
of were released yesterday.
Yeah.
You can almost see the spiral, like it's spiraling out of control the more the text went on. Just in regards to, my dad's a psychiatrist, I'm not, but I mean, like, if you're watching how those texts were unraveling, it was really evident that he was having a mental health crisis, which is a serious, serious issue in this country.
And I'm also kind of bummed that once again, we're not addressing the gun issue, which I really think is still one of the reasons. This is a uniquely American problem. Other countries have mental health issues. Other countries, like Japan, play too many video games. But the bottom line is just the proliferation of guns. And the other argument I can't stand is, well, look at Chicago. They have really tough gun laws, but look at all the guns. Yeah, that's because neighboring states next to them have lax gun laws. So you can get guns and bring them in. So I'm not uh, proposing a solution right now, but it would be healthy if there was at least a dialogue. But anyway, well, the other main issue that we really have to think about, because today is June 17th, and before our next podcast, the continuing resolution will run out on September 30th. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Here are mine. I think when you look at the arguments, and let's not debate whether Schumer was right or wrong to go along with supporting the bill last time, but this is one of the few areas that Democrats have power because 60 votes are needed to pass it. And the main arguments last time, well, the courts will stop him and the markets will correct, and there'll be a brace. He cares about the stock market, and look at Doge and all the dismantling of the government. So if you look at those three arguments right now, they're either been neutralized or weakened. The Supreme Court certainly isn't stopping him. The big test will be tariffs, because clearly the Constitution says that the president does not have the right to tax or impose tariffs. So will they stand up to him? I think, just being tangential, it would be the best thing for Trump if they did stand up to him, because it would help him, because he could blame someone else but not be burdened by it. It would help the markets, and it would make the Supreme Court look good because they're having a credibility crisis. Also, the markets have adjusted. The whole Doge situation isn't as dire. So I really believe that the Democrats should take a stand, but they have to take a stand for something. So my gratuitous advice to them would be focus on health care. extend the Obamacare subsidies, make sure that vaccines are widely available, and try to restore not all, but some of the Medicaid cuts, which would not only bring money back, but it would refocus people's attention on that big, awful bill. So they could do some other things, but I think healthcare is the issue people care about. Focusing on, authoritarianism or all this process stuff. Most Americans just don't focus on that. What say you, Kurt?
I think that Democrats actually would be better off not not precipitating a shutdown.
Interesting.
First of all, well, one again, like the best case Democrats can make heading into the midterms is that Donald Trump and the Republicans own everything outright: the economy, inflation, jobs, the market, tariffs, trade, all of it. I think that when you engage in, especially at the DC level, this type of legislative policy maneuvering, one, it's so far in the weeds that most Americans don't know what the hell it even means. They just see chaos in Washington and it's like, oh, there they go again. Like nothing ever gets better, same play over and over and over again. So there's little political benefit. But secondly, if you give the Republicans an out, like, hey, we were doing great, and then Democrats shut down the government, like you just kind of lose momentum. You lose messaging. Democrats aren't good at messaging, so I don't have any confidence they can win a messaging war right now on a shutdown. We have seen how they have splintered just in terms of reacting to the Charlie Kirk assassination. Like there is no real message coming from the Democratic Party. They're kind of all over the place because there are so many factions within the Democratic Party that espouse different beliefs, that there's no uniformity, and they just look like they're just trying to be all things to all people all the time, and you never win that way. And so, if I were Democrats right now, my advice to them would be, sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is if you get what you want. And there's an old saying that when the gods wish to punish us, they answer our prayers. Give Donald Trump Republicans everything they've ever wanted and asked for. Just say, you know what? It's
You
this is your time. You're in power. We're going to listen to American people and let you do what you're going to do, and you'll live with the consequences. I guarantee you, those consequences will not be politically advantageous come next November if you let them happen that way.
Well, let me just push back a little bit on that. And first of all, I think the American people, 80% of the American people don't approve of the Medicare cuts, and they're going to really affect a lot of people. Granted, they don't take effect until January of 27, but most American people want. And secondly, you're saying what I'm hearing from you as well, it's better to let them fail, even if it means not doing perhaps the right thing and standing for principles. And the third question I would ask is, what if you focused on some of the what people say are authoritarian things, like making sure that he can't send troops into the city, the Positamus Act, you
People
know,
don't care about that.
on
People
things.
don't care. People look and see, oh look, there's more police right now. That means my neighborhood's safer. That's great. People don't care about the posse comitatus act. They don't know what that is. They don't speak Latin. They don't care if the president has the authority to do something or not, as long as there's a result. Democrats keep putting themselves on the wrong side of things like crime and immigration, and they pay a price at the polls. Stop fighting fights that you can't win. Stop fighting fights where public opinion is
I
already
should have put
upside
the do
down.
not disturb sign on. These people are bothering us.
And and stop like this ridiculous practice that Democrats constantly engage in, where they try to make a quote principled stand, but no one gives a shit. Like people aren't going to remember in November of next year whether or not Democrats took a stand against a continuing resolution. They're not going to care. They're going to care about how their current state of affairs are going. What's in their bank account? Did the cost of living go down? Did it get easier to live their lives? Did it get easier to manage their families? That's it. Democrats got to stop fighting these fights that no one gives a shit about.
All right. What do you think, Ashley?
Well, I'm so jaded because doing this for 25 years, I think that we have this same conversation every single September. The government's going to shut down, and then it will happen again because there'll be a CR, and then we're going to have this conversation in November. I think, especially if Speaker Johnson gets the votes for it to pass on Friday, and then it goes to the Senate, and all Republicans except, Rand Paul votes for it, and he actually may even, because I mean, depending. And then all the Democrats shut it down. There is a chance that Schumer gets this, the blame, or the Senate Democrats do. I agree with Kurt. I don't know how much people care. And also, you're not going to solve any of those big issues in a CR. I mean, the biggest issue I think Democrats have in a good way to fight are the subsidies. Thune has been saying since the beginning, like, we're not doing it on a short-term CR. We will deal with it in November. And I think they have to. And I think they have enough votes that they're probably going to they're probably going to change some of the formularies and the formula for how it's calculated. But I do think that some form of the subsidies will be expanded because a lot of these districts need them.
Yeah, because they expire at the end of the year.
Yeah, something will happen, but that's where I would put all my efforts into that argument, which goes back to your healthcare argument, Dave. I think this September 30th, deadline of 7 weeks, and you know who's going to be the happiest person in the world if it shuts down? Russ Voigt from the OMB. He's going to love it because he'll just continue to cut, 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 cut. So it's actually a benefit. There's White House people that really want this shutdown to happen because of that.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. We will.
I'll tell you, if they do a shutdown, we'll have an emergency podcast taping to talk about it.
Yes.
All right, I think that we certainly will. And Kurt, you had something that you thought was worth us talking about. I always pick the topics. Why don't you pick one?
Oh, just as we were coming on air here, the Fed at their monthly Fed meeting count that announced that they were cutting interest rates 0.25%. It's the first Fed rate cut interest rate under Trump 2, something we obviously know he's been calling for since the day he got into office. It's created a lot of controversy around the Fed, whether it's the removal of Jerome Powell, the firing of one of the Fed governors, the appointment of another Fed governor. But at the end of the day, we're starting to see now the Fed rate cut, see if that has any impact. Interestingly enough, at this moment, the Dow Jones went up, but NASDAQ and S&P went down upon hearing the news. So we're getting a lot of mixed messages in terms of how it's even being received in the markets.
I wanted to see, and I didn't look when I got on. There's two things. One person voted against it, and I think it's the person that's there temporarily, Sam Moran, it's going to just be there 3 months. I want to check this. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he thought it didn't go far enough because kind of the argument was, is it going to be a 0.5% or a 0.25%? But the other interesting thing I think that they said today was that there'll probably be 2 more cuts by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think that's good. And the irony is oftentimes Trump, by trying to get complaining about what he wants and trying to change it, ends up getting what he wants. And so the fact that a lot of these tariffs and things have slowed down the job market to a trickle. In fact, it was negative job growth if you take out I think healthcare and government. So he got the rate cuts that he wanted. And I think that the whole Lisa Cook thing has blown up also. That's the Fed member he's trying to remove, because it turns out that what he's accusing her of is not only unsubstantiated, but 3 people in his own administration have done the exact same thing. So it makes it a little hard to hold water. So, but I think it's good. I think the rate cuts are good. I think you will probably see a couple of more rate cuts, maybe for a total of 75 basis points, certainly by early next year, and we'll see what happens. And we've also seen that the whole tariff thing has calmed down somewhat. Once again, I'm disappointed that he's putting these tariffs on India. I think it's driven India into China's arms. If you look at that summit that was had, and we've been working really hard on the India relationship, and he still hasn't done the same with China, which is also, I think, inconsistent. So, but so far, it's relatively smooth waters. I think the markets are assuming that it's not going to get too bad, and I think the rate cuts will help. So, fingers crossed that right now it's not so bad, which will help Trump. What are your final thoughts, Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think anything that can help keep the economy going is going to play well for him. I think if you're a homeowner, or you're looking to buy or sell your home, the cut on the interest rates is welcome news. We've seen the housing market kind of stagnate recently, as people have been pulling back on whether to put their house on the market or to go in and make a purchase because of interest rates primarily. So if this could help the housing market, and certainly if you're right, and there's one or two more cuts between now and the end of the year coming into 2026, it can really help address that housing market slump that we're in right now.
Yeah.
Ashley, I'll give you the last word.
No, I agree. I mean, listen, I think that again, I said this last time, the markets are doing just fine. It's the people at home that are they feeling some of this economic impact that still hasn't changed. It's the same thing that the problem Biden had is what Trump's dealing with right now. And if you talk about the midterm elections, if that doesn't change to people, that's going to be the issue. A CR and a shutdown, everyone's worrying about how to buy their, milk. They're not worrying about that stuff.
This is true. All right, on that note, we will have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for joining us on Practically Political. It's always great to have you. We will see you next time.